Welcome to week 2 of our White Flag Devotionals, everybody. We're going to be jumping right in this morning to Matthew chapter 17, starting at verse 14. It says, "When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. 'Lord, have mercy on my son,' he said. 'He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him.' 'O unbelieving and perverse generation,' Jesus replied, 'how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring your boy here to me.' Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed from that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, 'Why couldn't we drive it out?' He replied, 'Because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Just so that you guys know, I didn't create the list for these devotionals, so it wouldn't have been my choice to start week 2 with a passage on a demon-possessed boy, I don't think, but I like the fact that we're just looking at a bunch of stories from the life of Jesus and jumping right into that. I think that it's kind of organic, and I like the unedited feel. So let's just take a look at this passage today. You know, demons are mentioned quite often in the Gospels, with Jesus confronting demons on at least 7 different occasions. As we piece the stories together from the Synoptic Gospels, there's at least 7 times where he's confronting them. And it seemed like a pretty common occurrence during his ministry. You know, here in the West, of course, we tend to be pretty skeptical of anything related to demons or demonic activity, which is pretty consistent with our sort of naturalistic bent. We tend to think that nothing is really real unless we can look at it under a microscope, but we know that that paradigm really doesn't work for a lot of things, and you know, it really wouldn't work in the case of considering demonic activity. But demons actually continue to be understood as being real in most parts of the world today, as they have been throughout history. And in fact, even here in the West, many people in the fields of religion and psychology are both seeing sort of an increase in sort of demonic manifestations. And so this is quite interesting. You should know that even myself as a pastor, on numerous occasions over the years at our own church and with people connected to our church, that I have been called in to sort of look into things related to what people believe to be demonic activity or oppression. I'm just going by their own descriptions. I'm always very, slow to jump to any sort of conclusions when it comes to this stuff. But sometimes, guys, the manifestations of what people describe are simply very different from typical, mental anguish or anxiety that people experience. And, we're really unable to really get away from the fact that this looks like something demonic. You hear people talking about scary entities that they see, or hearing voices, pressure to inflict self-harm on themselves, seizures that people experience. Even respected psychologists like Dr. Richard Gallagher, who's an Ivy-educated, psychologist from Yale, sees undeniable characteristics that associate with demon activity beyond just regular mental issues that people may face. Now, honestly, much of it is very confusing as we look at it. I actually saw a news story from Peru in 2016 where upwards to 100 students all at once at a school, children 11 to 14, all experienced some form of strong demonic oppression, if not possession, right there on their campus, where they had to call in authorities and they were like shipping them out. It was really quite a crazy scene. And so a lot of this is very confusing, but you have to understand that there is a lot of reality to what we're talking about here. I asked this question: how does all of this relate this morning to the topic of surrender? Because that's really what we're focusing on. Well, the story doesn't say how the boy became afflicted with these spirits. We do see an act of surrender on the part of the father to bring him to Jesus, which is very important. The story also highlights an important truth, and that is that there is a spiritual battle going on. And that's what I really want you to get today. There is a spiritual battle happening. It's going on all of the time in the invisible realm, in the spiritual realm. Evil spirits are real, and they want to destroy us. They want to destroy our children. I believe this very firmly, and I've seen, evidences of this. We have evidence that certain activities open us up more to demonic activity, and we should be aware of that. Involvement in the occult, sexual depravity, things outside of God's guidelines, sexual abuse that's inflicted often on children, drug use. Those are some of the big ways that attachments can be made here. And we need to be surrendered to God in all of these areas and make sure that we're following what God says. You know, occultic practice is on the rise here in the West. Wiccan religion is becoming one of the fastest growing religions, actually, in North America. One of our members told me recently about how someone at their workplace was actually, they went into work and they saw them actually using tarot cards at work. You know, the Bible has been banned from our schools and workplaces for a long time, but, you know, you can actually bring tarot cards in and, you know, read people's signs and stuff like that. Guys, we're becoming more and more a pagan nation. And we, as the children of God, we need to surrender ourselves to God and to his ways. Same is true of sexuality and other things that relate to this topic. You know, we open ourselves up to dark forces when we live outside of God's boundaries. You know, the other point about surrender that I want to bring up here is that these disciples were unable to cast out this demon out of this boy. And Jesus and his inner circle, if you're reading the whole context, they had just returned from the transfiguration, seeing Jesus in all of his glory. But then they get there and they see that these other disciples were unable to cast out this demon. Jesus used the hyperbole of moving mountains and said, if your faith is strong enough, you'll be able to say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will do that. And so he said that their faith needed to be stronger. And so guys, in this season of surrender, this is all about us drawing closer to God. It's all about us, you know, experiencing more of God's power as we draw closer to him, as we separate ourselves from evil things and get away from these attachments that would connect us to evil forces and drawing closer to God and his power. And my hope is that during these 40 days that we will experience more of his power as we submit fully to him.